Hi, I'm Jeff Stark. Thanks for being with me today. In today's video, my hope would be that husbands and wives would be able to watch this particular video together. There's a number of reasons for that, which I think will become evident soon. It's not going to be a long video. It's going to be a rather short video, and the intention is to help the wives whose husbands have admitted to doing pornography. But I think it will be instructional for the women, and it will be instructional for the husbands as well. Here's what we're going to do today. I have a list here in my hands of about probably 20 symptoms that women experience who have husbands who are doing PMO, and that is to say they're doing pornography, masturbation, and of course orgasm. Men oftentimes who do PMO keep it secret, they keep it private. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, they're ashamed and they're embarrassed, and they don't want to feel like they got caught. They're embarrassed and they're ashamed and they feel guilty, and they don't want to they don't want to have to face perhaps what would be predictable on the part of them. They're having a wife who would be very angry and upset at them. So they tend to do it in secret. They tend to do it quietly. They hide it. They keep it from their wives because they don't want to get rained upon by the anger that the wives might be venting on them for doing something that would be so damaging to the relationship. But there's another reason why men aren't entirely honest about this matter, is because they know that this is very hurtful to women and to wives who are married to the men who do PMO. And so they keep it secret not only for their own sakes, but they don't tell their wives because they know implicitly that this is going to be very, very hurtful. And the consequences for the marriage can be damaging and far-reaching. And so what men tend to do, who have not found how to stop PMO, they tend to hide it and keep it from their wives. What I'd like to do today is just very briefly, it's not going to be a long video, but women who have husbands who are doing PMO suffer symptoms as a result of knowing that their husbands are doing PMO. And I've got a list of about 20 various symptoms that wives have whose husbands are doing PMO. Now, PMO is something that wives oftentimes don't talk about either, because with their friends or otherwise, because they're embarrassed about what their husbands are doing. They're embarrassed to be found in a marriage with a husband who's doing this. And so they often don't talk about it among their girlfriends as well, or maybe just among their best girlfriends. But they tend to keep these things quiet and personal as well, because they don't want to share with their friends what's going on in the life of their husband and the outcome that it might be having in the lives of the wives. But what I would like to do is share 20 of these symptoms that women struggle with, whose husbands who do PMO. And I want to do this because I want the wives to know that they understand that these symptoms are very normal. They're very predictable. They're very average. They're almost uncertainly going to be yours if you're a wife watching this right now, to some degree, quantity and quality. So there's going to be about 20 of them. You may only experience 2 or 3 or 4 of them. You may experience more than that. You may experience less than that. You might experience them on this level. You might experience them on a deeper level. And you might experience these symptoms on a devastating level. But I want to lay these out for you, ladies, and men, because men, I think you need to know that this is what your wife is experiencing. Wives, I'm sharing this with you today so that you can lay hold of perhaps some of those things that you've kept submerged. And hopefully this will be the impetus for you to go to your husband and say, here's the 6 symptoms that Jeff explained that I have experienced since you've been telling me about this problem. And I experienced them on this level and this level and this level. And so it's an opportunity for wives to say, okay, I've got a handle on this now, both quantitatively and qualitatively, so that she can go to her husband and say to her husband, this is me. This is what's happening to me because of what you're doing in our marriage. And I think it's important for wives to be able to identify that quantitatively, qualitatively. I think it's very important that they go to their husbands and tell the husbands. And I think it's very, very important for the husbands to be told specifically, quantitatively, and qualitatively what is happening inside of the wife because of what he's doing regarding PMO. Okay, so let's go through this list. I'm not going to have a lot of explanation along the way. There might be a little bit, but not a lot. But here's how women describe what they're going through in varying degrees. Okay, shock. It's not uncommon for a woman to feel like she's in shock, having heard about her husband's habit in PMO. Denial, pretending that I don't want to see it, I don't want to hear it. Don't talk to me about it. And so there's a denial and a pretending that she's not hearing that or her husband's not doing that because it's so painful. Number 3, lots of women feel anger and sometimes rage. And what precedes the anger is just a very deep and profound hurt, which comes out eventually, if not immediately, with anger, impatience, rudeness, and perhaps a rage. If it's not rage, then oftentimes women talk about experiencing some form of depression. Again, qualitatively, depending upon each woman on her own. When a woman hears that her husband's doing PMO, and particularly when the husband is blaming the PMO on the wife, she goes into a self-loathing. She gets angry at herself. She thinks, what's wrong with me? What am I not doing, or what am I doing that causes my husband to do this, and what's wrong with me? And so there's a self-loathing. There's a self-condemnation. There's a beating themselves up over the fact that somehow or another they're not adequate and sufficient for their husbands. They may feel that on their own, and they may be tempted to go there as well when the husband's telling them wrongly, well, I'm doing this because you're failing. So there's a sense of failure that a wife would feel, and a self-loathing and a self-condemnation that comes from the doubt that they're experiencing as a wife. There's a humiliation that goes along with this as well. There's confusion. There's a sense of confusion, self-doubt, disorientation. What? Why? How long? Where? Why? Those are profound and appropriate questions that should be given very, very good answers. Good answers are very much needed for a woman who is humiliated as a result of what her husband's doing and confused by that. This emotional disruption that's taking place, grenade, neutron bomb that the husband has dropped into the context of the marriage by virtue of his explaining the fact now and come clean that he's doing PMO. Well, it can come out with crying spells. Women can oftentimes and will oftentimes lose sleep because of what's been discovered by her husband confessing his sin. And by the way, it's not uncommon for a husband, when a husband does come clean to his wife, he feels better about having gotten it out there and no longer deceiving and lying to her and covering it up. He feels better having come clean, but to the degree that he's feeling better, she's feeling 10, 20, 30, 40 times worse than she was feeling prior to his confession. And that presents a problem in and of itself. He might be happy now that he's come clean, but she's not happy that he's come clean, particularly in light of the fact that he should not be having this problem. And now it's been dumped. She feels like it's been dumped on her. Now he's walking away feeling like the burden's been lifted. And now there's this tremendous burden really being placed upon her. It's very unfair. It's very inappropriate. There may be a sense of hopelessness, isolation. She may not know anyone else any other wives or women who suffer from this. And so she's not going to talk about it with others. She doesn't have anyone to talk about it with others. Then she may isolate herself and find herself in isolation and very alone and very lonely in this particular matter. There's a lot of fear. Well, what's this going to do to me? What's this going to do to him? What's this going to do to us? What's this going to do to our family? And if our family and if our marriage is going to be on the rock, and are we going to be able to survive this? And if we don't survive this, if we don't come out of this well, what's the ramifications for the family all across the board? Not only now, but through the years, as it changes everything, actually. So it might end up in divorce. And what's going to happen as a result of the divorce? That's obviously there's a lot of fear and anxiety that the wife would experience having heard that her husband's doing PMO. Sometimes there's shame. This vulnerable and sexual and intimate exposure that her husband now is bringing to the marriage may certainly bring shame out of him. He may be experiencing shame, and that would be appropriate for him to do, but it also might be shared on the part of the wife. She could feel very profoundly embarrassed. She would have sleepless nights, as I've mentioned, but sometimes in her distress, in her discouragement, in her depression, in her anger, she might be turning to alcohol or other drugs to help her to get through this. She might be turning to food to help her to get through the difficulty that she's experiencing. There's going to be resentment. There's going to be bitterness that she's going to be experiencing. And there's going to be a grief. It's like the marriage that I thought that we had, well, will we ever have a good marriage again? Perhaps in her mind, the marriage that we had is now dead and can never be resuscitated now that this has been brought up and brought to her on behalf of her husband. One more that I'll mention here, and that is for some women, it is the quantity of symptoms that I've described are large. There are many, and the qualitative of it might be so great. The two of those might be so great that the woman is really going through what we would call a very profound sense of trauma. Trauma is a severe sort of emotional thing that happens to wives and husbands and children in various situations. A person who has been sexually abused and who has been perhaps raped go through an emotional trauma that really the symptoms are this many and they're this deep, and when they're combined together, well, we would call this a unique situation causing trauma in the life of the wife. That's why in previous videos I've strongly advised the men who are doing PMO to get good counseling, that with a counselor who's able to say that he's been able to help men get out of this and stay out of it, that they get marriage counseling as they struggle through this and through this. And then thirdly, it's very important for the wife to find a counselor, a female counselor or a man counselor, a male counselor, who can help her as she struggles through the various symptoms that she's experiencing, as she deals with the confusion of who's at fault for what's going on here, as well as qualitatively, if she's experiencing these symptoms to a deep degree, a traumatic degree, then it would be very, very important that the wife would find an individual counselor who would be able to help her through this particular crisis and trauma. Ladies, I hope that's helpful to you as you suffer usually and sometimes silently and quietly with the symptoms that you're experiencing. Men, I want you to hear from me, but hopefully at the end of this video as I hang up, that your wife will be coming to you and saying to you, here are the symptoms that Jeff mentioned. I've experienced this many, and I've experienced them on this degree, and you need to know this because this is what you've brought into my life, and this is what you've brought into our marriage. And I expect you to take ownership for the damage being done to me, and the damage that's being done to our marriage, and the damage that's going to take place in the context of our family. Not that I'm going to tell the kids about what you've told me, but they're going to see me crying, they're going to see me tired, they're going to see me discouraged, they're going to see me depressed, they're going to see me crying, and they're going to be asking why. And they're probably going to be saying this for quite some time. And I don't think it's for them to understand what's going on here. but nonetheless, they're going to be upset seeing that their mother has been upset by something that she's not going to be telling them about. This is an important, sad, difficult, hard step for a husband and wife to go through. But wives, this is so that I've shared these symptoms so that you know that you're not alone in this, that other women suffer these same symptoms. And secondly, so that your husband can have some sense of the height and width and the depth and the breadth of the damage that he's bringing into your life by virtue of this PMO problem. Thanks for being with me today.